Imagine being blind in absolute darkness, but this time, the darkness is literal. You're buried alive under 6 feet of snow in the Norwegian mountains, and you've been here for 6 hours. Your family put you here. Not accidentally, deliberately. Because in 1878 rural Norway, a blind daughter is considered a curse that brings misfortune to the entire household. So your father and brothers dug a hole during a blizzard, placed you inside, covered you completely with packed snow, and left you to freeze to death. You're 19 years old, and you're dying slowly in frozen darkness. Your fingers are numb. Your legs won't move. Your breathing is getting harder as the tiny air pocket near your face shrinks with each frozen exhale. You can't see. You've been blind since birth, but you can hear something above you. Footsteps crunching through snow. And then a voice, male and commanding. I can hear your heartbeat. I can hear you breathing. Hold on, I'm coming. How can anyone hear a heartbeat through 6 feet of snow? The answer is simple. The person digging toward you isn't human. He's Christian Frostholm, a 4,000-year-old alpha vampire whose supernatural senses detected your faint life signs buried where no human could find you. And he's not rescuing you out of kindness. He's rescuing you because the moment he sensed you dying beneath the snow, he recognized you as his destined mate. The blind girl buried alive is about to discover that the darkness she's lived in her entire life was preparation for meeting someone who exists in eternal night. Elise Anderson had been blind since birth, and for 19 years, her family had treated her blindness as curse that brought misfortune to their household in 1878, rural Norway. Disabilities were seen as divine punishment or demonic influence. A blind daughter was considered unmarriageable burden, who consumed resources without providing value. Elise's family, her father Niels, her mother Ingrid, and her 3 older brothers, had tolerated her existence for 19 years, with increasing resentment. Then came the winter when the crops failed and livestock died from disease. The family needed someone to blame, and Elise's blindness made her the perfect scapegoat. The blind one has cursed us, Niels declared one evening. Her affliction has brought misfortune to our farm. We must remove the curse before we lose everything. What are you suggesting? Ingrid asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. We take her to the mountains during the next blizzard, Niels stated coldly. We leave her there, nature will do what we cannot. Remove the curse from our family. Elise heard this conversation from the next room, and terror flooded through her. They were planning to kill her, to abandon her in the mountains to freeze to death, because they believed her blindness caused their misfortune. 2 days later, during a massive blizzard, her father and brothers forced her into heavy winter clothing and dragged her up the mountain. Elise couldn't see where they were taking her, but she felt the brutal cold and heard the wind screaming through the darkness she lived in constantly. They stopped finally, and Elise heard digging sounds, her brothers excavating a hole in the deep snow. Please, she begged, her voice barely audible over the storm. Don't do this! I'm your daughter, your sister! You're a curse, her eldest brother Lars interrupted. This is necessary. They placed her in the hole, a vertical shaft dug deep into the snowdrift. Then they began covering her, packing snow tightly around her body until she was completely buried with only a small air pocket near her face, allowing minimal breathing. May God forgive us, Ingrid whispered, though she made no move to stop what was happening. Then they left, and Elise was alone in frozen darkness. For someone who'd been blind her entire life, darkness wasn't new. But this darkness was different, absolute, suffocating, final. She was buried alive, unable to move, unable to see, unable to do anything except breathe in shallow gasps as the cold penetrated deeper into her body. Hours passed. Elise felt herself dying slowly, her fingers going numb, her legs becoming unresponsive, her breathing growing more difficult as the air pocket shrank with each frozen exhale. She thought about her life. 19 years of being treated as burden because she couldn't see. 19 years of being told she was cursed. 19 years of knowing her family wished she'd never been born. And now she was dying in frozen darkness, abandoned by the people who should have protected her, buried where no one would find her until spring thaw revealed her frozen corpse. Except something changed. Elise heard footsteps above her, crunching through snow with purposeful stride. Someone was nearby, but she couldn't call out, couldn't signal, couldn't do anything except lie there dying while someone walked past her grave. Then the footsteps stopped, directly above her, and a voice, male, commanding, speaking with absolute certainty, penetrated the snow. "I can hear your heartbeat. I can hear you breathing. Hold on, I'm coming." Elise felt digging begin, and she realized with shock that someone was actually finding her, actually rescuing her from the frozen grave her family had made. But who could hear a heartbeat through 6 feet of packed snow? The digging continued with supernatural speed. Elise felt snow being cleared from around her body far faster than any normal human could manage. Within minutes, hands, strong and cold, were lifting her from the vertical shaft, pulling her out of the frozen grave. "You're safe," the male voice stated. "I've got you. You're going to survive this." Elise tried to speak, but her throat was too frozen. She felt herself being carried with effortless strength, felt movement that suggested her rescuer was running through the blizzard with speed that seemed impossible. "My name is Christian Frostholm," the voice continued, speaking as if understanding she needed distraction from her terror. "I'm taking you to my residence nearby. You're suffering from severe hypothermia. If I don't warm you immediately, you'll die within the hour. But I need you to understand something important before we arrive. I'm not human, I'm a vampire. What I'm about to do will save your life, but it will also change you permanently. Do you understand?" Elise managed a small nod, uncertain whether this vampire was better than freezing to death, but willing to accept any alternative to dying buried in snow. Christian brought her to what felt like a stone building. The temperature shift from brutal cold to merely cold suggested thick walls blocking the wind. He laid her carefully on something soft, a bed perhaps, and began the process of warming her. "I'm going to use vampire venom to accelerate your recovery," Christian explained. "It won't transform you. I'm only using enough to stimulate circulation and prevent tissue death from frostbite. But you'll feel it working, and it will be intensely painful as your frozen nerves wake up. I'm sorry for that pain, but it's necessary to save your life." He bit his own wrist and pressed it to her lips. "Drink, just a little." Elise drank, and liquid fire flooded her system. The venom spread through her frozen body, forcing circulation to restart, compelling her heart to beat stronger, demanding her damaged tissues to heal. The pain was excruciating, worse than the freezing had been. But underneath the agony, she felt herself returning to life. Over the next several hours, Christian monitored her recovery with clinical precision. He wrapped her in heated blankets, administered more venom when necessary, and spoke continuously, his voice becoming anchor that kept her conscious through the worst of the pain. "Why?" Elise managed to ask finally, her voice hoarse but functional. "Why save me? You don't know me." "Because you're my destined mate," Christian replied simply. I was hunting in the mountains when I sensed you. Faint heartbeat buried under snow where no human could detect it. My vampire senses perceived what human senses would miss. I heard you dying, and I recognized immediately what you are to me. So I dug you out and brought you here to save you. Your mate? Elise repeated, confused. But I'm blind. I'm the curse my family tried to eliminate. Why would a vampire want someone like me? Because being blind has nothing to do with your worth, Christian stated firmly. And because the moment I heard your heartbeat struggling beneath the snow, I knew I would do anything to keep you alive. You survived being buried alive, Elise. You survived your family's attempt to murder you. That strength matters far more than whether you can see. I don't feel strong, Elise whispered. I feel broken. Then let me help you heal, Christian offered, however long it takes. Over the following days, as Elise recovered physically from near death by freezing, the psychological impact of what her family had done became increasingly apparent. They buried me alive, she stated one evening, her sightless eyes staring in Christian's general direction. My own father and brothers dug a hole in the snow and buried me because they believed my blindness cursed them. They left me to freeze to death. They murdered me, or tried to. They committed attempted murder, Christian agreed. Elise, what they did was monstrous. Your blindness doesn't curse anyone. It's just a physical characteristic. You can't see with your eyes. But that doesn't make you defective or cursed. Your family chose to believe superstition rather than recognizing your humanity. But I am defective, Elise protested. I've been blind since birth. I can't see anything. I'm dependent on others for everything. I'm burden. You're disabled, Christian interrupted gently. That's different from being defective or burdensome. Elise, you've developed other senses to compensate for lack of vision. Your hearing is extraordinary. You can identify people by their footsteps. Your spatial awareness is remarkable. You navigate rooms without crashing into furniture. You've adapted to blindness in ways that demonstrate intelligence and capability. Those are strengths, not weaknesses. But I can't see, Elise whispered. I'll never see your face. I'll never see anything. How can I be valuable if I can't do something as basic as see? Because value doesn't depend on sight, Christian replied firmly. Elise, I've been alive for 4,000 years. I've known countless humans who could see perfectly but were blind to everything important: compassion, truth, others' suffering. Vision is a useful tool, but it's not the source of worth or capability. You understand things that sighted people miss because you've learned to perceive the world differently. But trust was difficult for Elise. She'd spent 19 years with family who treated her blindness as curse, who saw her as burden, who ultimately tried to kill her. Learning to trust Christian, a vampire she couldn't see, whose face she'd never perceive, whose expressions she couldn't read, required conscious effort. How do I know you're not just using me? She asked one evening. You say I'm your mate, but I can't see you, I can't read your face or know if you're lying. How do I trust someone I can't see? By trusting actions rather than appearances, Christian suggested. Elise, you can't see my face, but you can observe how I treat you. Do I speak to you with respect? Do I accommodate your blindness without treating you as helpless? Do I give you agency rather than controlling you? Those actions reveal my character more reliably than any facial expression would. I want to trust you, Elise admitted. But 19 years of being treated as curse have made me believe I'm unworthy of genuine care. How do I accept that someone values me when my own family wanted me dead? By recognizing that your family was wrong, Christian stated. Your blindness didn't curse them. Their cruelty cursed them. You survived being buried alive, Elise. You're stronger than they ever recognized, and I see that strength even if you can't see yourself. I'm trying to believe you, Elise whispered. I'm trying to see myself the way you describe. But it's hard. Then take however long you need, Christian replied. I'll be here, always. 2 months after Christian had dug her from the snow, Elise returned to her family's farm to confront them about attempting to murder her. Christian accompanied her, his presence both protective and supportive as they approached the farmhouse where Elise had spent 19 years being treated as curse. Niels Anderson answered the door, and his expression shifted from surprise to horror when he saw his supposedly dead daughter standing on his threshold. Elise? But we left you. You left me buried in snow to freeze to death, Elise stated clearly, her sightless eyes fixed in her father's general direction with eerie accuracy. You dug a hole, placed me inside, covered me with snow, and abandoned me to die because you believed my blindness cursed your farm. You attempted to murder me, Father, and I came back to tell you that your daughter survived what you tried to destroy. We did what was necessary, Niels defended weakly. The crops failed, the livestock died. We needed to remove the curse. I'm not a curse, Elise interrupted, her voice steady despite the emotion underneath. I'm blind. That's physical characteristic, not supernatural affliction. Your crops failed because of weather and disease, not because your daughter can't see. You blamed me for natural disasters to justify murdering someone you considered inconvenient. Her brothers appeared in the doorway, Lars, Eric, and Jonas, all three looking uncomfortable at seeing the sister they'd helped bury. How did you survive? Lars asked. We covered you completely. You should have frozen within hours. Someone heard me, Elise stated simply. She gestured toward Christian. Someone with better senses than humans possess. Someone who recognized my heartbeat beneath the snow and dug me out. Someone who valued my life when my own family considered it worthless. Christian stepped forward, his vampire presence making all the Andersons step back nervously. I'm Christian Frostholm. I found Elise buried alive in the mountains. I rescued her from the frozen grave you created, and I'm here to ensure you understand something crucial. Attempting to murder your disabled daughter because you blamed her for crop failure is both morally reprehensible and legally actionable. Elise survived your attempt, but your actions reveal exactly what kind of people you are. The kind who would bury their blind daughter alive rather than accept that misfortune isn't caused by disabilities. We were desperate, Ingrid protested from inside the house. The farm was failing. You needed a scapegoat, Christian interrupted coldly. And Elise's blindness made her convenient target. But burying her alive didn't improve your farm, did it? The crops are still failing. The livestock are still dying. Because none of those problems were caused by a blind teenager. They were caused by natural circumstances that have nothing to do with your daughter. What do you want from us? Niels asked wearily. I want you to acknowledge that attempting to murder me was wrong, Elise stated. That my blindness doesn't make me curse or burden, that I deserved protection rather than death. I don't need your apology. I need acknowledgement that what you did was monstrous. There was long silence finally. Niels spoke. We were wrong. Your blindness didn't cause our problems. We blamed you because it was easier than accepting our own failures. I'm sorry, Elise. I don't forgive you, Elise replied quietly. But I needed you to admit what you did. Now I can move forward knowing the truth. that my family tried to kill me and I survived anyway. She left with Christian, feeling closure she hadn't known she needed. 4 months after being rescued from the snow, Elise discovered something extraordinary. Vampire senses could be shared with a destined mate through blood bond. "I want to try something," Christian stated one evening. "An experiment that might change how you experience the world. Elise, you've been blind your entire life. You perceive the world through hearing, touch, and spatial awareness. But vampire mates can share sensory experiences through blood connection. If you're willing, I can let you experience my vampire sight. See the world through my eyes. Perceive what I perceive. It won't cure your blindness permanently, but it would let you see temporarily while we're connected. Would you want that?" Elise's heart raced. "I could see? Actually see?" "Through me," Christian clarified. "While we're blood bonded, you'd perceive my visual input. You'd see what I see, experience sight the way vampires do, which is more detailed and extensive than human vision. But it would only last as long as the bond is active. When we disconnect, you'd return to your normal blindness. Is that something you want?" "Yes," Elise breathed. "I want to see. Even temporarily, I want to know what vision feels like." Christian initiated the blood bond carefully, exchanging small amounts of blood that created temporary psychic connection between them. And suddenly, Elise experienced something she'd never known. Sight. She saw the room through Christian's eyes, every detail rendered with supernatural clarity colors. She'd only heard described became actual sensory experience. Depth perception that she'd learned to approximate through sound became concrete visual reality. She saw Christian's face, sharp features, pale skin, those storm gray eyes that glowed faintly red, and felt overwhelming emotion at finally perceiving the vampire who'd saved her life. "Oh," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "This is what seeing feels like. This is what I've been missing." They maintained the bond for hours while Christian showed her his world. The Norwegian mountains at night rendered visible by vampire sight that didn't require light. The intricate details of snowflakes that human vision would miss. The subtle movements of nocturnal animals that ordinary eyes couldn't detect. But when the bond faded and Elise returned to her familiar blindness, she felt unexpected peace rather than loss. "I thought seeing would make me want it permanently," she admitted. "But experiencing vision temporarily made me realize something important. I'm complete as I am. Blindness is part of who I am. It's shaped how I perceive the world, developed my other senses, made me who I am. Seeing was beautiful, but being blind isn't wrong or deficient. It's just different." "That's profound wisdom," Christian observed. "Most people would beg for permanent sight after experiencing vision temporarily." "I'm not most people," Elise replied with a small smile. "I'm the blind girl who survived being buried alive, who learned that her worth exists independent of her ability to see, who discovered that different ways of perceiving the world are equally valid. I don't need to see permanently to be valuable or complete. I'm already both of those things." "You're extraordinary," Christian stated. "And Elise, knowing that you'd choose to remain blind, that you've accepted your blindness as part of yourself rather than deficiency requiring correction, that makes me love you even more deeply." "I love you too," Elise replied. "Even though I can't see your face right now. Because love doesn't require vision. It requires recognition. And I recognize you completely." 8 months after being rescued, Christian raised the question of vampire transformation. "I want to discuss your future," he said carefully. You've been recovering from being buried alive, learning that your blindness doesn't determine your worth. But Elise, we need to address practical questions. Do you want to remain human, or are you interested in vampire transformation? Would transformation cure my blindness? Elise asked directly. No, Christian stated firmly. Vampire transformation enhances what you are. It doesn't erase physical characteristics. You'd be blind vampire rather than sighted human. Your other senses would become supernatural in intensity. Your hearing would detect sounds miles away. Your spatial awareness would be flawless. Your ability to perceive the world without vision would be extraordinary. But you wouldn't gain sight. If you're hoping transformation will make you sighted, I need you to understand, it won't. Elise absorbed this information carefully. So I'd be blind forever, immortal but still unable to see. You'd be yourself forever, Christian corrected gently, with enhanced abilities but fundamental Elise-ness intact. And Elise, I need you to understand something crucial. I'm not offering transformation to fix you. You don't need fixing. I'm offering transformation so we can spend eternity together, but only if you want it, and only if you're choosing it from self-acceptance rather than hoping it will cure your blindness. What would blind vampire be like? Elise asked thoughtfully. Extraordinary, Christian replied. Your hearing would detect heartbeats miles away. Your spatial awareness would let you navigate perfectly without sight. Your other senses would compensate so completely that most vampires wouldn't realize you're blind until you told them. You'd be disabled in the technical sense, lacking vision, but so capable that the disability would be barely noticeable to others or limiting to you. But I'd never see, Elise repeated. I'd exist for eternity without ever perceiving colors or faces or visual beauty. You'd perceive beauty differently, Christian suggested, through sound, through touch, through the enhanced sensory experiences vampire nature provides. Elise, I've met blind vampires before. Most are remarkably content because their enhanced non-visual senses compensate so thoroughly that they don't feel they're missing anything crucial. You'd experience the world differently than sighted vampires, but not less completely. I need time, Elise stated. Time to decide whether I want to be blind forever or remain human and eventually die. Take all the time you need, Christian replied. This is an enormous decision. You should make it from confidence rather than pressure. Over the following months, Elise contemplated immortality as blind vampire. She observed Christian's world, experienced temporary blood bond sight periodically, and gradually came to profound realization. She didn't need to see to be complete. She'd spent 19 years blind and had developed extraordinary capabilities in compensation. Becoming vampire wouldn't cure her blindness, but it would enhance everything else. Her hearing, her spatial awareness, her ability to perceive the world through non-visual means. She'd be blind vampire, yes, but she'd be extraordinarily capable blind vampire who'd already proven she could thrive without sight. I've made my decision, she told Christian finally. I want transformation, not despite being blind, but including being blind. I'm choosing to be immortal as myself, blind, capable, complete. I don't need sight to be worthy of forever. Then you're genuinely ready, Christian concluded. You're choosing transformation from self-acceptance rather than self-rejection. That's exactly the right reason. The transformation began on a winter night, exactly 1 year after Christian had dug Elise from the snow. The symmetry felt appropriate. She'd nearly died in frozen darkness a year ago, and now she was choosing to die and resurrect as something supernatural. Christian drained approximately half her blood, bringing her to death's threshold. Then came the venom, burning through her system with intensity that made being buried alive seem mild by comparison. 3 days of agony followed, but Elise had survived being buried in snow for 6 hours, survived her family's attempt to murder her, survived learning to trust after profound betrayal. Physical pain felt manageable compared to what she'd already endured. What concerned her wasn't the pain. It was whether transformation would change her relationship with blindness. Would becoming vampire make her resent her lack of sight? Would supernatural abilities make her blindness feel more limiting? The transformation completed on the 3rd day, the pain stopped abruptly, and Elise opened her eyes, still sightless, still perceiving only darkness, but now with supernatural awareness that made sight seem almost irrelevant. She could hear Christian's heartbeat 3 rooms away. She could sense the presence of small animals in the forest outside through vibrations in the air. She could perceive the exact dimensions of the room through echolocation so precise it functioned like 3-dimensional mapping. She could detect temperature variations that indicated where furniture was located, where walls ended, where doors opened. She was still blind. Her eyes still didn't function, still perceived no light or color or visual input, but her other senses had become so extraordinarily enhanced that she barely noticed the lack of vision. "I'm still blind," she said wonderingly, testing her new vampire voice. "But I don't feel blind. I can perceive everything, just not through vision. I'm disabled but not limited, blind but completely aware." "That's exactly what I hoped you'd experience," Christian replied. Appearing beside her with movement she tracked perfectly, despite not seeing it. "You're blind vampire, Elise. You'll exist for eternity without sight, but you'll perceive the world so completely through other senses that most vampires won't realize you can't see until you tell them." "I don't need to see," Elise stated with certainty. "I thought I would. I thought becoming immortal without gaining sight would be tragedy. But experiencing these enhanced senses, I'm perceiving more than most sighted people ever could. I'm blind, yes, but I'm also extraordinary. Those things aren't contradictory." Over the following weeks, Elise discovered the full extent of her vampire abilities. She could navigate forests perfectly in absolute darkness through echolocation. She could identify people by their unique heartbeat signatures from hundreds of yards away. She could detect lies through micro-changes in breathing and heart rate that her enhanced hearing perceived. She could fight with supernatural speed and strength, tracking opponents through sound and air movement rather than vision. She was blind vampire. She would exist for eternity without seeing colors or faces or visual beauty. But she perceived the world with such extraordinary completeness through other senses that vision seemed almost redundant. "Thank you," she told Christian one evening, "for digging me out of the snow a year ago, for showing me that blindness doesn't equal worthlessness, for helping me become vampire who's blind and capable simultaneously, rather than blind, therefore limited." "You were always capable," Christian replied. "Transformation just made it impossible for anyone to miss." 50 years after Elise's transformation, her family's descendants faced catastrophic crisis, and they sought help from the blind vampire they'd once tried to murder. The Anderson farm had failed completely. The family had lost everything through poor management and refused to adapt to changing agricultural practices. They were facing starvation and homelessness, and in desperation, they'd tracked down rumors of a blind vampire who ruled the Norwegian mountains. Not knowing she was the daughter they'd buried alive 5 decades earlier, Elise received them in her mountain residence with Christian beside her. She'd become legendary among vampires. the blind alpha's mate whose supernatural senses made her one of the most effective hunters in Scandinavia, despite lacking sight. Humans told stories about the sightless vampire who could track anyone anywhere, who perceived everything without seeing anything, who'd transformed disability into devastating advantage. Her great-great-nephew, descendant of the brother Lars who'd helped bury her, approached with desperate humility. "We've heard stories about the blind vampire," he stated. "They say she helps those in need. Our family is starving. We've lost everything. We're begging for assistance." "Your family buried me alive in 1878, Elise interrupted, her sightless eyes fixed on him with eerie accuracy. "Your great-great-grandfather Lars helped dig the hole. Your great-great-great-grandfather Niels ordered it. They left me in frozen darkness to die because they believed my blindness cursed their farm. I was 19 years old, blind and terrified, and they murdered me, or tried to. I survived because someone heard my heartbeat under 6 feet of snow. Now, 50 years later, you come begging for help from the blind woman your ancestors tried to kill." The descendant paled. "We didn't know. The family never spoke of... They never spoke of murdering their blind daughter," Elise finished coldly. "How convenient. Well, let me tell you what happened after they buried me. I became vampire. I spent 50 years developing abilities that make blindness irrelevant. I can hunt better than most sighted vampires, track targets across hundreds of miles, perceive threats before they materialize. I'm extraordinary despite being blind. Or perhaps because being blind forced me to develop capabilities sighted individuals never need. And now your starving family wants help from the disabled woman they tried to eliminate." "Please," the descendant begged. "We're dying. Like I was dying buried in snow," Elise stated. "Except I'm going to do something your ancestors didn't. I'm going to show mercy." She provided resources to save the Anderson descendants from starvation. Not because they deserved it, but because she was better than the family who'd tried to murder her. She gave them one chance to survive, more than they'd given her. "But understand this," she told them before they left. "Your ancestors tried to kill me because they believed blindness made me worthless. They were wrong. I survived being buried alive, became vampire, spent 50 years proving that disability doesn't equal inability. You're alive now because the blind girl they tried to murder chose mercy over revenge. Remember that when you tell your children about the sightless vampire who saved your family. Remember that the woman you're describing is the disabled daughter your ancestors buried in snow, and she became more extraordinary than any of them ever imagined." 1 century after being buried alive, Elise's legend had spread throughout vampire and human communities alike. They called her the Sightless Oracle, the blind vampire whose supernatural senses made her one of the most powerful beings in Scandinavia. They told stories about the disabled woman who'd transformed what humans considered limitation into devastating advantage, who'd proven that blindness was characteristic rather than deficiency, who'd survived being murdered by her family and emerged powerful enough to show mercy to their descendants. But Elise understood her story simply. She'd been buried in snow by family who believed blindness made her cursed. She'd been rescued by vampire who heard her heartbeat when no one else could. She'd learned that disability didn't determine worth, and she'd spent eternity proving that the blind girl everyone underestimated was actually more perceptive than anyone who'd ever doubted her. She was blind. She was extraordinary, and those truths existed simultaneously, without contradiction. The girl buried in snow had become the woman who taught an immortal world. That vision is optional, but perception is everything. That being blind doesn't mean being limited, and that those who survive being buried alive often rise to heights their murderers never imagined possible. She couldn't see, but she perceived everything, and that was more than enough.